Good morning, Mission Hills. How's it going? I had the privilege of getting to know a lot of the leaders and people of this church when I was here last weekend, and it was great. And I came away thinking a number of thoughts. One of them was this: what's happening here at this church isn't normal. I've walked with a lot of churches through this season that you're in right now, through a season of transition. And usually here's how it goes. A lead pastor takes a calling to another place. Everyone kind of stacks hands and says, listen, this place is bigger than one person, and kind of things plateau for the first couple months, and then people start to leak out the side door. And I don't know if you've been to any other services here. That has not happened at Mission Hills for some reason. I think it speaks to the health and to the DNA of this place, and it speaks to your commitment. And so I just want to encourage you. One, I want you to know this is weird. And two, I want to encourage you to keep leaning in to with your presence, with the way that you support this church financially. And I'm really excited to see what God has in store. From what's happened over the last year or so, I think that the future is incredibly bright. And so I just felt like I'd randomly share that with you before we started talking. How many of you learned a name in the last 7 days? Like a new name in the last 7 days? Raise your hand. Put your hands up. Keep them up. Okay, look around the room. People actually did something because of a sermon. Okay? It's amazing. Now, how many of you have no idea what I'm talking about right now? Just raise your hand too. Raise your hand. Okay, you're all slackers. You weren't here last week when we kicked off this series, so I'll give you a quick overview. We're in week 2 of a series called Love Where You Live. And last week we talked about the power and the value of taking this idea of loving your neighbor literally and seriously. And there's a text that we're using to frame this entire series. It's found in Acts chapter 17. Paul is in Athens, and he's talking to this large group of people that have gathered in this marketplace. He's sitting on this little place called Mars Hill, right below the Acropolis, and he's talking to them about what he's observed in their city. And he says to them, I notice that you're very religious people. You have idols for everything. Today when I was walking about, I even noticed that you have an idol to the unknown God. And I love what Paul does here. He takes this pagan idol and he uses it as a bridge to talk to these people about Jesus and about God. And he looks at them and says, I'm going to tell you about this God that you do not yet know. And he gives, Acts 17 is one of the great sermons in the entire Bible. It talks about the characteristic, the qualities of God, nature of God. And here's part of that sermon, Acts 17, 26 and 27. From one man, he, God, made every nation of men, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he determined the time set for them in the exact places where they should live. God did this so that men would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. Here's what this text says. You don't live where you live for the reasons you think you do. It's not because you always wanted 4 bedrooms up and you finally got it. It's not because you really wanted that school district for your kids to go to. It's not because you can't afford the place that you really want to be. You live where you live because God has placed you there, and he's placed the people there around you. And if you get this, if you allow this to sink in, you will gain a rich theology of place, something that's all throughout the text, but that many of us, because of our pace, because of the number of things that we're involved in, many of us have lost that. And I love the posture that's implied here. He's placed you there, and he's placed those people around you there so that when they reach out for God, that they'll have handles to grab onto. This right here, this is the antidote to hanging out with people who think like you do. This right here is the key to going back and just living on mission right where you are. Now, if you did not learn a name, if you didn't raise your hand, if you didn't learn a name and you were here last week, somehow these last 7 days have just passed you by. Maybe you even walked out of this room a week ago and said, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take one of those little refrigerator magnets, which, by the way, we ran out last week. So as you walk out today, I want you to grab one of these. Maybe that can be your excuse, okay, of why you didn't learn a name. Maybe, more likely, your excuse is something like this. I just didn't have time. That whole week just kind of flew by. I drifted through it, and I just didn't make the time to actually go learn one more name. It's very likely that that was the case because the issue of time is the main obstacle that inhibits us from engaging the people that we live around. We live in a world that values production and activity. We find ourselves checking off box after box after box, getting things done. My email inbox is never down to zero. There's always another voicemail to return. There's always another text. I don't know about you, but I rarely get to the end of the day, never get to the end of the day, when I just think to myself, got it all done today. I guess I'll just wake up, figure out what comes at me, and go from there. Most of us live at a very frantic, hectic pace. And I think it's ironic in light of the fact that we have access to more time-saving devices than any people group in the history of the world. And yet we have the least amount of margin and the least amount of time. You ever thought about that? Imagine if I would have come to you 15 or 20 years ago and told you, hey, guess what? In 15 years, you don't actually have to be in your office or at your home and make a phone call. You can just do it while you're driving around in your car. And also, while you're doing that, you can send mail. And it won't take days to get there. It'll actually just happen instantaneously. Also, if you want to watch your favorite TV shows, you can actually just do that whenever you want and skip through all the commercials. Can you believe we used to orient our life around watching something? Or, hey, if you have a meeting on the other side of the country, you're going to be able to sit in your living room, half in your pajamas, look onto a TV screen, have a face-to-face meeting with somebody, and then turn that off and go on your way. I'm going to go on and on here. But if I would have told you this 15 or 20 years ago, one of the first thoughts you would have is this: what am I going to do with all my free time? I'm finally going to be able to do all the hobbies that I've been wanting to do, to spend the time with the people that I want to spend time with, right? How many of you are really wrestling, trying to figure out what to do with all of your free time? Anybody in this room? This kid right here. I like you, man. How old are you? 12. Good. Just wait, man. These are the glory years. Just enjoy this right now. It's only worse from here. How is that possible? Well, we just jam more and more and more. Trust me, we become more efficient. Like, what we used to do in 40 hours actually only takes us 12 hours to do. But we didn't actually figure out a way to create more margin in our lives for the most part. We just added more and more and more to our plate. And I think there's these subtle myths that exist that perpetuate this cycle. One of the things that we say to ourselves is, someday things are going to settle down. It's just a rough 2 months, but I just get through this, and then it's going to really smooth out. You ever say that to your spouse? When I say that to my wife, she just laughs openly at me because she's heard it so many times. Here's the truth. Things will settle down when you die and when you get really intentional about saying no to some things that are already on your plate. The second myth that I think perpetuates this cycle is we find ourselves, we don't want to say this one consciously. We kind of just keep this one in the background. It's kind of a chronic thought. Someday, more is going to be enough. If I just had this promotion, if I just had this relationship, if I just had this thing, then I'd be content and I wouldn't have to drive so hard. Now, we all know this is true, though. There's not a single person in this room that's one purchase away from contentment, or 2, or 3, or 4. But it's easy to drift into this way of living where you think that might be true. And then finally, the one that I fall into most is I think to myself, everybody lives like this. I look around at different people that I'm engaged with, and I just go, this is just the way it is. This is just how our culture is, and there's no use really fighting it. I'm just going to try to deal with it. That's a lie. Everybody does not live like this. In fact, Jesus tells us there's a different way to live. And so today, we're going to continue in Luke 10. Last week, we talked about the great commandment and the story of the Good Samaritan. And today, we're going to look at the narrative that takes place right after the story of the Good Samaritan. It's found in Luke 10, verses 38 through 42. It's just another story that's probably really familiar to you. Today, we're going to turn it on its head a little bit and look at it through the lens of neighboring. So if you have your Bible, you can turn there. If not, it's going to be up on the screen. Verse 38. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him, to Jesus, and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Let's unpack this story a little bit and see what we can learn from these two sisters. Let's start with Martha. The key phrase that describes Martha is this. She was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Martha's busyness causes her to miss out on an opportunity to be with Jesus and to be with others. And at first glance, it looks like Martha is the one who really gets it. She cares so much about Jesus that she opens up her home, she prepares a meal for him. However, when we take a closer look, we realize that Martha has become distracted. She's rushed, she's hurried, and she misses the main thing. You ever had this experience? You get so dialed in, you get so into the weeds, taking care of tasks, that you miss it. I served as a pastor of a local church for 10 years. I had the privilege of walking with people as they prepared for their weddings and then doing the weddings. There was this pattern that I noticed. Even though I try to warn people about it, it just always seemed to happen. A couple would come together. They would begin to prepare and get all the to-dos done for this day that they had been anticipating for a lot of their lives. And if you've ever been involved in something like that, you know how much work there is to be done. You know how many things are on the to-do list. And the wedding day would come, and I would stand up there with them. We would do the wedding ceremony, and then oftentimes we're back and we're just kind of alone. It's just me and the couple doing the marriage certificate. And more often than not, one of them looks at me and says, was that it? That feels like it was like a blur. And I just sit there going, oh my goodness, this is so sad. All of the energy and the time and the money that got invested into this day, into that moment, and you missed it. You missed it because you got distracted. Martha's story reminds us that there is a danger of missing something even more important than a wedding day. There's a danger of missing the point when it comes to our spiritual lives. A book that's had a significant impact on my life is The Life You've Always Wanted by John Ortberg. One of the most powerful parts of the book for me was when Ortberg stated, hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. He coins this phrase, hurry sickness. He goes on to say that the reason why hurrying is so dangerous is because love and hurry are not at all compatible. Because love always takes time, and time is the one thing that hurried people don't have. Let me repeat that. Love and hurry are not at all compatible because love always takes time, and time is the one thing that hurried people don't have. In our relationships, whether it be with our spouses, our coworkers, our kids, our neighbors, hurry is toxic. And this really came home for me a number of years ago in my own neighborhood. When I got convicted about this, I started to spend more time out in my front yard, and I would try to look for opportunities when people were walking by or happened to be out to just kind of engage them and say hello. One of my neighbors, his name is Bryce, we'd known each other for about a year. I'd lived there for about 2.5 years. We only knew each other for about a year, and I've had a number of interactions together. But then we went on this short trip out to Nebraska, some other guys. And while we were there, he said, "You know, Dave, it's really good to get to know you in this setting. It's just, it's so much different than some of our other times that we spent together. And if anybody ever says that to you, the best thing to do is just keep moving on. Don't dig in. Trust me." But I wasn't that smart, so I said, "Hold on, what? What are you talking about?" He goes, No, I'm just saying it's good to be with you." I said, "No, what are you talking about?" We're just alone. He said, "I don't know, Dave, like, most of the time when I see you around, I just get the feeling that you need to get somewhere else, that you have other stuff to do. And so you just kind of say hi and ask a couple, questions, but I don't get the sense that you really care." And when he said that to me, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Because I have some friends in my life who every time I'm around them, I just feel like they're saying, "Hey man, can you wrap this up? I got a lot of stuff to do. Can you just tighten up whatever you're trying to say right here? Get to the point." And when I experience that, it's tough for me. You ever experienced that in your life? You ever been around somebody who was hurried, who had better things to do than to engage and to be present with you? Or have you ever been like me? Have you ever been on the other side of that fence? I think it's really important for us to note what Martha was doing. What Martha's doing is not bad. She invited Jesus into her home, and she was preparing a meal for Jesus. Wrap your head around this real quick here. Martha gets reprimanded for literally serving Jesus, for doing ministry. I think this story is here right after the Great Commandment, right after, hey, what's most important? And then we have this story about these two sisters. Jesus is telling us, listen, you have to learn how to say no to the good things so that you can center your life on the main thing. Martha's not hanging out just binge watching Netflix. When we begin to think about our lives and what we're engaged in, it's not always the things that are just a waste of time or they're just treading water that we have to trim out. Sometimes it's actually really good things so that we can be centered on the main thing. Now, let's turn our attention to Mary. As we look at Mary, we read this passage. It's important for us to understand what's going on here culturally. This one sentence is loaded with significance. Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. In Hebrew culture, to sit at someone's feet indicated a relationship between a disciple and a teacher. So Mary's act of sitting at Jesus' feet goes against a number of cultural norms. Women are not supposed to be students. They're certainly not supposed to be disciples of a rabbi. Women were supposed to be in the kitchen helping their sisters with the meal. At this point in time, a woman's worth, her identity, is intertwined with her ability to be a good host. But Mary doesn't care. Mary goes against the cultural norms of her day because her life is centered on the main thing. She realizes what it's all about, and then she acts on that realization. The text reads that only one thing is needed. Mary knows what it is, and then she lives it out. And I think that in order to be like Mary, we must be willing to step out of some of the cultural norms that exist today. Unfortunately, in our society, living at a pace in which we're present with the people around us, that's become a countercultural thought. If we're going to be people that are engaged with our neighbors, then we have to make time to simply be in our neighborhoods. And if we're going to make time to simply be in our neighborhoods, many of us need to learn the art of elimination. I would guess that a few of you in this room have had the opportunity to go and to be in Florence and to actually see the David statue live, Michelangelo's David statue. I was there about 15 years ago. I did the little walking tour with the headphones. And the tour guide who was talking through those things that you can barely even hear told this story. And he said, after this statue was completed, somebody asked Michelangelo, what was the process of creating this beautiful piece of art? How did you actually do it, like in a really pragmatic way? Explain it to us. And Michelangelo said, I took this giant piece of marble, and then I eliminated everything that wasn't a masterpiece. Not the most humble thought, but still. Michelangelo understands the art of elimination. And I believe that if we're going to be the kind of people that God wants us to be, to live the kind of lives that He wants us to live, that we too have to learn the art of saying no to some things that we might currently be involved in so that we can be more present with the people that God puts on our hearts. And Jesus models this over and over and over again. When we look at the life of Jesus, we see that in crucial times, in pivotal moments, both before and after, He slows everything down. He withdraws. He experiences solitude. He prays. When I think about doing that, there's this anxiety that raises up in me. I think to myself, well, then I won't be able to do that, and then I couldn't do that. And then it kind of dawns on me this. I think Jesus got a lot done. But He never seems to be rushed and hurried. He doesn't even seem to be driven. And I think Jesus is saying there's a better way to live. Just because everybody else is doing that, it doesn't mean you have to. And this way that I talk about living, it's more powerful, it's more potent than just running around like a chicken with your head cut off. This is one of my biggest personal struggles. I struggle with keeping my attention on things and being present with people. And I've struggled my whole entire life with that, even before my wife and I had 4 kids. We have a 12-year-old son, an 11-year-old daughter, a 9-year-old daughter, and a 7-year-old daughter. So I wasn't good at this before, and then you just add the insanity of 4 kids and the season of life that they're in, and I'm really struggling now. Let me tell you what I'm learning. Taking this idea of loving your neighbor literally and seriously will confront a lot of things in your life. Confront how you view your house and your stuff. And it'll confront what you say no to and what you say yes to. I love sports. I have like an unhealthy obsession with sports. And so does my wife. And so do my kids. Not because they probably love sports, just because we brainwashed them. And I had a lot of experiences that really shaped me growing up because my parents exposed me to different activities. And I really want that for my kids. And kind of the cultural norms that I experience and observe are fairly insane when it comes to kids' activities. And yet I feel like if I don't engage, if my kids aren't a part of that, then they're just going to fall behind. I want what's best for them. I want them to be the best little human beings they could possibly be and be shaped by some of these things. But yet I know that every single time I sign them up for one more thing, it's more time than I'm sitting in a car outside of the place where God has put me. And I'm not going to tell you that your kids shouldn't be running around involved deeply in activities. What I will tell you is this. You should be feeling this tension. I don't have the answer for you. I do know this. If you're not even experiencing this tension of trying to figure out how do I reconcile the kind of life that we're living and all the things that we're involved in with the kind of life that I see Jesus living, then something's wrong. If you are experiencing the tension, good. Stay in it. Keep wrestling. Keep praying. Keep asking God, what does it look like? Every time you have to make a commitment to something, you say yes or no to something, what would it look like if you actually ran that through the filter of what Jesus said matters most? Love God with everything you have. love your neighbor, love others as yourself. I think this is the key to beginning to experience the kind of life that God wants us to live. All throughout the weekend, people have come up to me afterwards and just go, man, that is like incredibly convicting. Some have come up and said, I think there's like, I kind of disagree with maybe the way you interpret, like, this is like where the rubber meets the road. This is a church that has a long, long history in phenomenal, in-depth Bible exegesis. And we're not doing any of that over the 3 weeks that I'm here. Here's what we are doing. We're taking the most basic thing that Jesus said, and I'm putting it in front of you and saying, are you willing to do that? Like maybe before we talk about like the grad school seminary stuff, could we actually put into practice what Jesus said matters most? I want to tell you something. If you'll give yourself to this, it will change this place forever. Because this is the lab where we live out the New Testament. It happens right outside our front door. What's it look like to just start taking the next small step? To say, you know what, yeah, I think I can make time to learn and retain and use a name. And I'll be really honest with you, that's not just where it ends. Like this year, this is like a little mini parish. This is like a little Trojan horse. But if you actually do this, it'll start sucking you in to living with some of these people at a deeper level than you currently are. And I think that's part of the genius of the Great Commandment. I think that's part of the reason why when Jesus said, if you only do one thing, do this. And as we rediscover a theology of place, as we rediscover the art of neighboring, God will use that, not just to change our neighborhoods, but also to change us. Would you pray with me? God, thank you for this incredible story about your son and these two sisters. God, thank you for the way that it just surfaces so much of the stuff that we're trying to navigate right here in our lives today. God, would you give us the desire, courage to make time for the people that you've placed right around us. In your name, amen.